Have you ever wondered why people say money makes the world go round? What would happen if suddenly the whole world ran out of money? What if people couldn't buy food, pay for their houses, or even trust their banks? Well, that actually happened almost 100 years ago. It was called the Great Depression, and it changed everything about how we use, save, and understand money. Don't worry, we'll make it super simple. We'll talk about what caused it, what happened to people, and how the world came out of it stronger. So, grab your thinking caps and let's travel back in time to the 1920s. Chapter 1. The Happy, Roaring Twenties. The year is 1920. The world has just finished a big war, World War I. Now people are happy to be alive. They want fun, music, parties, and progress. There are new inventions, cars, radios, fridges, and even early airplanes. Jazz music fills the air, movie theaters are packed, and cities are glowing with bright lights. People are working, factories are busy, and everyone feels hopeful. This time was called the Roaring Twenties, because life felt loud, fast, and exciting. Chapter 2. The Magic of the Stock Market. Now let's talk about how people were making money, and how things went wrong later. Imagine you and your friends start a lemonade stand. You need money to buy lemons, sugar, and cups. So, you say, if you give me $10, I'll give you 1 share of my stand. If your stand makes more money, your friend's shares become more valuable. That's called a stock, a small piece of ownership in a business. In the 1920s, people thought the stock market was magical. They said, if you buy stocks, you'll get rich fast. So, millions of people started buying stocks. Some people even borrowed money from banks to buy more stocks, thinking prices would always go up. That's called buying on margin, and it's like climbing too high on a shaky ladder. It feels great until it falls. Chapter 3. The bubble grows now. Picture a big balloon. Every time someone buys more stocks, the balloon gets bigger. Everyone's excited. They say, keep blowing. The balloon will never pop. But balloons don't grow forever, right? At some point, pop. By 1929, stock prices had gone way too high, higher than what companies were really worth. People were paying too much for things that didn't actually have that much value. It was a giant money bubble and it was about to burst. Chapter 4. The Great Crash, October 1929. It started with fear. Some big investors noticed that prices couldn't keep going up forever, so they started selling their stocks. When others saw that, they panicked. Everyone tried to sell their stocks at once, but nobody wanted to buy. The prices fell fast. People shouted, cried, and begged in the streets of New York City, outside the stock exchange. On October 29, 1929, known as Black Tuesday, the stock market crashed completely. Millions of people lost their savings in a single week. The value of companies fell like dominoes, and those dominoes didn't stop falling. Chapter 5. The banks fall too, but it didn't end with the stock market. The real disaster came next, the bank crisis. Remember, people had borrowed money from banks to buy stocks. Now that the stocks were worthless, they couldn't pay back the banks. So the banks started running out of money. Imagine you put your birthday money in a bank, and one day, you go to take it out, but the bank says, sorry, we don't have your money anymore. That's what happened to millions of families. People stood in long lines outside banks, hoping to get their savings back, but most didn't. Banks closed one after another, thousands of them. Without banks, people couldn't borrow money to start businesses, buy homes, or pay workers. It was like the heart of the economy had stopped beating. Chapter 6. Life gets very hard when businesses couldn't get money. They had to close their doors. Workers were fired. And when people lost their jobs, they couldn't buy food, clothes, or furniture. Without customers, stores and farms couldn't survive either. It became a terrible cycle. No jobs gives no money, gives no spending, gives more job losses. By the early 1930s, millions of people around the world were unemployed. Families waited in long lines for soup and bread. These were called soup kitchens and bread lines. free food for people who had none. Children wore hand-me-down clothes with patches. Many families lost their homes and had to move into small shelters made of wood and metal. They called these places Hoovervilles, named after President Herbert Hoover, who many blamed for not helping enough. It was a time of sadness, fear, and hunger. Chapter 7. The Dust Bowl Disaster. As if that wasn't enough, something terrible happened in America's farmlands. Farmers had been planting crops again and again without letting the soil rest. Then, from 1930 to 1936, a terrible drought hit. No rain for years. The soil became dry and dusty. Strong winds blew the dirt into huge clouds called dust storms. It looked like the sky had turned brown. People had to wear cloths over their faces to breathe. Crops died, animals died, and farmers had to leave their land behind. This became known as the Dust Bowl. Many families packed what little they owned and traveled west to look for work, often in California. Imagine moving to a new place with only a suitcase and hope in your heart. That's what thousands of people had to do. Chapter 8. A sad, silent world. The Great Depression wasn't just in America, it spread across the globe. Other countries traded with the United States, so when America's economy fell, the whole world felt it. Factories closed in Europe, Asia, and South America. Farmers in Canada and Australia also lost their crops. It was a worldwide problem, millions of people out of work everywhere. It was the quietest time in cities that were once full of life. Even children stopped playing in the streets because everyone was worried about finding food. Chapter 9. A new president and a new deal. But in 1933, a new leader came to help. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, also known as FDR. He had a big smile and a strong voice. He told people, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." He started a plan called the New Deal, and it gave people hope again. The government began hiring people to build roads, bridges, schools, and parks. These jobs helped families earn money again. Farmers got help to grow crops the right way. Banks were given new rules to keep people's savings safe. And a new organization called the FDIC was created. It guaranteed that your money in the bank would always be protected. FDR also started a system called Social Security, so older people could still get money even if they couldn't work anymore. For the first time in years, people smiled again. Chapter 10. How the World Recovered. The Great Depression didn't end right away. It took more than a decade for the world to fully recover. But, slowly, things started to get better. Factories reopened, new machines were built, and people began to find jobs again. By the late 1930s, countries started trading once more. Then came World War II in 1939. It was a terrible war, but it also made factories work again, producing materials, food, and supplies. This put millions back to work and finally ended the Great Depression. Chapter 11. The Strength of the Human Spirit. The Great Depression showed that people can survive even the hardest times. Families shared food with neighbors. Communities built soup kitchens. People traded clothes, fixed each other's houses, and took care of the elderly. Children learned to find joy in small things, playing with sticks, reading, and dreaming of better days. Even when money was gone, hope was never lost. Chapter 12. The World Today. Today, we have rules and safety nets to prevent another Great Depression. Banks must keep enough money to protect savings. The government monitors the stock market. There are programs to help people who lose jobs. And most importantly, we've learned to plan better to make sure one mistake doesn't break everything again. Chapter 13. The Big Lesson. So, what is the Great Depression really about? It wasn't just about money. It was about how people reacted when everything fell apart. They learned to be patient, brave, and kind. They learned to rebuild from nothing. And they proved that even when the world feels dark, the light always comes back.